Two legendary warriors, one epic battlefield. When the might of Hercules clashes with the skill of Hector, only one can emerge victorious. Strength meets strategy, power meets precision. Who will stand tall when the dust settles? Witness the ultimate battle of legends. The stage was set. The battlefield was neither Troy nor Olympus, but a vast arena conjured by the gods, where the sky roared with thunder and the ground trembled with divine power. Titans and minor gods gathered, their forms flickering between mortal and celestial. The winds howled as the heavens bore witness to the impending clash. Hercules strode forward, his every step cracking the earth beneath him. His presence was overwhelming, more than a man, yet not quite a god. He had bested beasts of legend, wrestled with the gods themselves, and now stood before Hector, the mortal whose skill rivaled the greatest of men. Hector, the defender of Troy, met his gaze with unwavering determination. He had faced Achilles, had fought for his city until his dying breath, and though he was only a man, his courage made him immortal. The spear in his grip felt like an extension of his very soul, the shield upon his arm bearing the scars of wars long past. He was no demigod, but he had been the shield of his people, and he would not falter. The gods observed in silence, anticipation thick in the air. There would be no interference, no divine interventions. Only strength, skill, and willpower would decide the victor. Hercules raised his club, rolling his shoulders as if shaking off the weight of past battles. You have courage, Trojan, but courage alone does not win battles. Hector did not respond. He did not need words. His resolve was answer enough. He planted his feet firmly, shield raised, spear angled. He knew the power that Hercules wielded, strength beyond measure, durability that defied reason. But no warrior was invincible. He had studied Achilles, had learned how gods and men alike could be wounded. He would fight as he always had, not with brute force, but with precision and unwavering resolve. Then, with a deafening clap of thunder, the battle began. A stillness settled over the divine battlefield, thick with tension, as the two warriors circled each other. The sky above swirled with ominous clouds, their shadows stretching over the arena like silent spectators. The ground beneath them was neither of earth nor Olympus, but something in between, solid yet shifting, as though even the land feared the titanic struggle about to unfold. Hercules took the first step, muscles rippling beneath his lionhide cloak. He swung his club in a slow arc, testing its weight, though he needed no reminder of its power. Every sinew in his body was honed for combat, forged in the trials of his 12 labors, tempered in countless battles against monsters, giants, and men. Hector, standing his ground, watched the movement with keen eyes. He had fought warriors of unmatched skill, but none with the sheer raw power that Hercules possessed. He tightened his grip on his spear, shifting his stance ever so slightly. Against a man of overwhelming strength, speed, and precision would be his weapons. Then, without warning, Hercules struck. The club, as thick as a tree trunk and hardened by divine craftsmanship, whistled through the air. The force behind it was enough to crush the walls of Troy in a single blow. But Hector, anticipating the attack, stepped swiftly to the side. The club slammed into the ground, shattering stone and sending a shockwave across the battlefield. Dust and debris erupted in all directions, but Hector was already moving. He lunged forward, spear aimed at Hercules' exposed side. It was a strike meant to wound, not kill, for Hector knew no man, mortal or demigod, could be felled in a single thrust. The spearhead pierced flesh, biting into Hercules' side, drawing the first blood of the battle. Yet, Hercules did not falter. Instead, he turned with unnatural speed, his massive hand snatching the spear shaft midair. With a single pull, he ripped the weapon from Hector's grasp, snapping it like dry wood. The broken half of the spear fell uselessly to the ground. Blood dripped from his wound, staining the lion pelt at his waist, but his expression remained unchanged. "Not bad," Hercules said, gripping the broken shaft. Then, with effortless might, he hurled it back. The jagged weapon became a blur, slicing through the air toward Hector with lethal precision. The Trojan warrior barely had time to raise his shield, bracing himself. The impact was monstrous. The shield cracked upon impact, the force behind it sending Hector skidding backward. He gritted his teeth, pain surging through his arm, but he held firm. He could not afford to stop. Even as Hercules advanced, Hector moved with him, pivoting on his heel, sword flashing from its sheath. His shield was damaged, but it was still useful. He would not fight this battle defensively. That was a mistake he made against Achilles. This time, he would strike first, and strike hard. Hercules swung again, his club a blur of destruction. Hector ducked, the wind from the swing rushing over his back like a tempest. In the same motion, he twisted and slashed his sword at Hercules' knee, aiming for the tendons, his greatest chance at crippling the giant. The blade connected, but it did not cut deep. Hercules roared, not in pain, but in frustration. He had underestimated Hector's speed, but now he would end this. He lashed out with his free hand, fingers closing around Hector's shield arm before he could retreat. A crushing grip, a vice of divine power. Hector struggled, his arm burning under the pressure, but Hercules lifted him off his feet. With a mighty heave, he hurled him across the battlefield. Hector crashed to the ground, rolling before slamming against a jagged rock formation. His breath left his lungs in a painful gasp. Dust clouded his vision, and his shield, his last defense, lay shattered beside him. His body ached. His strength was waning. Yet he did not surrender. With great effort, Hector forced himself up, sword still gripped tightly. His body screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain. His vision cleared just in time to see Hercules charging, club raised high, ready to deliver the final blow. Hector had only one chance. Hector's body burned with exhaustion, but his spirit remained unbroken. Every muscle in his frame ached from the sheer force of Hercules' assault, yet he refused to stay down. His breath was ragged, his vision blurred by sweat and dust, but he could still see the massive form of his opponent charging toward him, the club raised high, ready to end the battle in one decisive strike. Time seemed to slow as Hector steadied his stance. His shield was destroyed, his spear shattered, but he still had his sword, his last and only weapon. He tightened his grip, muscles coiling in preparation. He had studied warriors greater than himself. He had faced death before. He would not wait for it to claim him. He would meet it head-on. As Hercules brought his club down, Hector moved. With a final burst of speed, he sidestepped the blow, the club slamming into the ground with a force that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The very earth cracked beneath it, a deep fissure forming where Hector had stood just moments before. But Hector was already behind his opponent, his sword flashing as he drove it toward the back of Hercules' knee, the only vulnerable point he could reach. The blade struck true, slicing through flesh and drawing another burst of divine blood. Hercules let out a roar, staggering forward. His leg momentarily weakened. Hector saw his opportunity and lunged again, sword aimed at Hercules' exposed side, where his earlier spear strike had already wounded him. But this time, Hercules was ready. With terrifying speed, he turned, his massive hand catching Hector's wrist mid-thrust. The force of the grip was unbearable, fingers tightening like iron, stopping the blade just before it could land. Hector's entire arm went numb, the strength drained from it in an instant. Then, with one brutal motion, Hercules wrenched the sword from Hector's grasp and snapped it in half. The broken blade fell to the ground, useless. Hector's heart pounded. He had fought with everything he had, used every skill and strategy he knew, but it was not enough. Hercules, bloodied but standing strong, lifted his club once more. Hector did not flinch. He did not beg for mercy. He did not attempt to flee. He simply stood his ground, his head held high, accepting his fate with the same unwavering resolve that had made him Troy's greatest warrior. The club came down. The impact was swift, final. Hector fell, the weight of the blow crushing him into the dust. The battlefield grew silent once more, the echoes of battle fading into nothingness. The duel was over. Hercules stood over his fallen foe, his breath heavy, his wounds bleeding, but his victory absolute. He had faced warriors, beasts, and gods alike, but Hector had been one of the greatest challengers he had ever met. There was no triumph in his expression, no arrogance in his stance, only respect for the warrior who had fought until the very end. With slow, deliberate steps, he turned and walked away, leaving behind the fallen prince of Troy, his name forever etched in the annals of battle. The gods had their answer. The greatest warrior to ever walk the earth had been decided. Hercules had won. The end.